Before going into designing characters, I like to think about various poses that I can use for a specific character. And most of the time, I do a bunch of gesture studies before finding the perfect pose for the character. And drawing from reference is good for building muscle memory for what human bodies look like, so I try to do these kinds of studies when I have the time just to get better. I have used mostly Senshi stock images for references. Now they're called Adorka stock, but since they have a lot of images in their DeviantArt library, that has always been a good place to start looking for a pose. Most of these sketches are just like 2 minute sketches, or they're even less than 2 minutes because I'm just trying to find right poses for my characters. And once I find a nice pose for my character design, I start polishing the drawing. And now I am starting to work on a project not really about characters but more about the designing of costumes and origins of clothing or history of fashion. So, for this project, I wanted to find poses that will show the costumes in a clear way. This means that I was not looking for dynamic poses that can show character. Instead, I needed templates like mannequins better for showing what the clothes and accessories are. Here is the process of how I like to create these kinds of pose templates for myself. I like this pose because the clothing that I will put on the body will be readable in this pose and it is slightly turned to the side. I like it better because it shows the design better. And then I start with a very simple gesture line drawing and then start to build up from there. I like the body pose, but the positioning of the hands will not work for my project. So I start making some changes. I lower the angle of her right arm, and for her left arm, I completely change the pose of her hand. As you can see, I'm using a grid with 9 heads proportions, but I did not use the upper grid, so I am trying to fit my pose in a 8 head proportion. Since it is sometimes considered ideal body type, I like to work this way, but I think the reference is not 8 head, it is more like 7.5, but I like to be in a place between stylization and realism. If this one was going to be a fashion croquis for a fashion illustration, I would make it even more stylized and use the 9 head grid fully. I'm drawing from reference, but I'm changing a lot of things. I would still call this a semi-realistic drawing, and I always do a couple of runs on the same pose, lowering my opacity and adding a layer on top, drawing it again and again until I like the pose enough. Here the same process. I start with the simple gesture lines, which are more like where I think the bones should be, and obviously anatomy is not my strongest suit, especially when it is male anatomy, just like this drawing is about. But drawing is a skill that takes time and effort, and every time I draw, I'm trying to make some progress. I drew many fashion illustrations, and they're mostly focused on females, so sometimes I make male drawings a little feminine. My real goal here is to have at least a template for menswear that I will use in the future. I did not need a ton of muscles for my simple design template, but it is just needed to look masculine enough because I will use these for history of fashion. Nowadays we may have unisex clothing or gender neutral fashion, but in the past clothing was an important part in gender differentiation, so I just want a male and female template for showing the different clothing types. I also did a few tests on these poses to see if they will work as putting the clothes on. They should be just like dolls that I can put clothes on, and there might be a chance that I will eventually use them as paper dolls for a book project. So after that, I decided that I can polish the line art and then maybe add some color and start using them. And these are just two of these templates. I'm right now trying to build a library of templates for myself because these will not be enough. I may need side views, back views for showing various types of costumes. So I drew a lot of these sketches and sometimes I mix and match between them. Like if I like the upper part of a specific pose and then for a reason I am in need of a different pose for the legs, I can always do something like this. Anatomy wise, they may not be perfect, but these are not for figure drawing studies. These are just for clothing, and the mannequins used in fashion brands or shops are mostly stylized too, but I have not yet started to vary the body types. Of course, for character design I will need different body types later on. For now, these can work. Later on, I may need more dynamic representation because poses add life and movement to figure sketches. They allow designers to show garments in action, providing a better sense of how the clothing interacts with the human body. For example, a sketch of a model walking in a flowing gown can illustrate the fabric's fluidity, while a seated pose can highlight the fit and comfort of a pair of pants. This dynamic representation helps in predicting how a garment will perform in real life situations. I will need variety in design exploration also. If I can have a library of pose templates, they will offer diversity in design sketches, enabling me to experiment with how different garments might look on different body types or in various activities. This variety encourages creative exploration and can inspire thinking about designs in new ways. It also helps in identifying potential design flaws or areas for improvement before the garment is produced in real life. But I will be working on fantasy designs, so I may be sometimes not thinking about accuracy or the actual garment production. I will not start design experimentation right away, but for my new project on understanding what clothing is and learning about the origins of clothing, these kinds of studies will be sufficient. And meanwhile, whenever I have the time for a quick figure sketching session, I will be working on new poses to add to my library. For now, I drew a couple of poses for both male and female templates. I added color shading and some background, so I hope these poses will help me for my project, and if they are not enough I will be adding more. And I'm looking forward to sharing my new drawings and research on clothing, so I hope to see you in my next study.